Hey guys, it's Cory from CoryBakerFilmmaker.com, and I just saw The Farewell, written and directed by Lulu Wang. So, caught this movie at the Alamo Draft House. Again, just an awesome experience. Tried out some new food, just thought you might like to know. The brisket mac and cheese is delicious, and so is the chicken sandwich and the milkshake. So, it's not all about like the movie going experience at Alamo Draft House. It's also very much about like what you get to eat, like how you round out your experience, and like the in food with Alamo, I think is tough to beat against other movie theaters in the area. It's really worth checking out. Onto the plot of The Farewell. Basically, the deal here is that we find out that a Chinese grandmother is cancer and she has 3 months to live. And her whole family devises a plot, basically, to have a wedding to have an excuse for everyone to go back to China and spend time with the grandmother. But they're not going to tell the grandmother that she's sick because, as they say in the movie at one point, everyone in China dies of cancer. Either you actually die from the cancer or you die from the fear. So they have decided that they're not going to tell her that she's dying, that she is close to the end. In fact, whenever they talk about doctors' reports or anything like that, they just lie to her, say like it's all gone, it's all good. But the whole idea is that everyone in the family knows that the grandmother is about to die, except for the grandmother. And for some people in the family, it's a little bit harder to hide it on their faces. Part of the reason why Awkwafina's character is not originally sent, or is not originally going to go back to China, even though she has a very close relationship with the grandmother, is because they fear that she is going to give it up, that she knows that the grandmother is dying, she's going to tell her. I really enjoyed this flick, and I think that it would be in the best interest of everyone who enjoys a more adult, dramatic fare to go check this out, because it's just wonderful. The cinematography is great, the direction is great, the sound is great. Everything just works out wonderfully. I thought that everyone in the cast did a really incredible job as well, and Awkwafina especially. I mean, like I've seen and heard interviews with Lulu Wang where she sort of like talked about the casting of Awkwafina as just sort of like, like, really? Like, you think she would work? But she nails it. She does a great job. And let this be a general lesson to people. Comedians generally have an easier time doing dramatic work because comedy is way harder. So I wasn't surprised that Awkwafina was able to do such a dramatic role with such great talent. It was just that, I guess, more her act in other things that I've seen her in, most notably Crazy Rich Asians, was funny and enjoyable, but also felt like I could only deal with it for so long. And with this role, with her playing as Billy, like, I never had that feeling. I never thought that she was going to. She never like annoyed me at any point. And I think that part of the annoyance that I ever feel is just sort of like based off of the comedy work that she does and the way that she sort of carries herself a little bit over the top in that comedy work. I just she hit every note pitch perfect in this one, and I thoroughly enjoyed her performance. And I'll say this: the rest of the cast did a really great job too. Like I couldn't find anybody in this whole movie who didn't feel like they were just sort of a real person that we were just sort of like following along. Like it was all very natural. There wasn't any moments where I felt disconnected from the work. I would say that the only thing that did from time to time impede my ability to truly understand the acting work that's going on is not being able to hear when a lot of this is spoken in Chinese. I don't have a discerning enough ear to know traditional Mandarin, anything like that. But I obviously it's all happening in Chinese. There's a there's a thing when you're listening to people perform in a language that you know, where you can sort of infer little bits of the performance based off of the cadence and how the words come out of the mouth and the way that somebody carries it. Like, so much of great acting performances have been line readings. So when you don't have the crutch of knowing the language and you're sort of reading subtitles, you lose out on whether or not the cadence and everything like that was exactly the way that it should be for the language spoken. But I mean, like, you know, from my perspective, nothing about it took me out of the movie at all. I was locked in. In fact, with a movie like this, I kind of enjoyed the fact that it was mostly in Chinese and that it was all subtitled, because there's these little things that you feel like you'd miss if you were like listening to an English movie. You don't necessarily need to be like locked onto the screen at all times. When you have subtitles and you need to read them to know what's going on, you need to be locked onto the screen. You can't break your attention, and that like sort of draws you in further. So I mean, like, as an idea of like having this whole thing essentially be in Chinese, it worked very well, at least from, you know, from my perspective of the American audience. I will say this though, the my one real constructive note, I guess, about this whole thing is that so much of this movie is built upon the lie that they're telling the grandmother. So even the beginning of the movie, the first, you know, the opening text that we get at the beginning says, you know, based on a true lie. So a lot of this is just based off of like the deception of the family towards the grandmother. But that makes me on edge the whole time about everything and whether or not anything is true. So, you know, like, obviously they're all getting together for a wedding. One of Nai Nai's, the grandmother's grandsons from Japan, is coming to China to marry his girlfriend. And there's a lot of talk about, like, well, they have been dating for a long time and stuff. Which, and the way that the characters, the grandson and his fiance play it, it sort of feels like sometimes like maybe this is somebody that they hired to pretend to marry him so that the grandmother can see this moment, and, you know, she'll be dead by the time they ever see the grandson again, so what does it matter? And there was a lot of times where I'm wondering, is this wedding for real? They talk about in the movie when they visit the gravestone of Nai Nai's husband, the grandfather of the family, that Chinese people pay people to cry in cemeteries so that they can properly express their grief. And like that sort of added into the whole, like, well, is this wedding happening for real? Is this just sort of like a sham ceremony that's happening? And then even further, I don't want to ruin it, but at the very, very end of the movie, like in the post-credit scene, there's another thing that pops up that makes me go, well, is this real? what of these things, you know, like they do a good job of sort of like layering your perception on what is true and what is not. And while that adds to the intrigue of the movie, you do feel like you're walking away from the whole thing at the end going like, well, I feel like I need to talk to Lulu Wang and find out whether or not, you know, the wedding was real or anything else related to it. Like, is it all built upon a lie, or is it just the we're not telling grandma about the cancer part? Because that whole thing just sort of weighs on you throughout. Like, whenever you're seeing the couple, like, because they look a little like they don't really know each other or love each other, and it's sort of like, you know, you didn't hire a prostitute, but you hired an actress to pretend to get married to, and you're not, you know, when it comes time to sign the document, you're just not doing, you know, you don't click the pen. You just like make grandma happy, you know? One thing about the production design and the way that the whole thing, the way they portray China and this whole thing, I thought, it was one of the best I've seen in a long time as far as like making this place feel real. And not only feel real, but to feel like I'm coming home. So even though I'm not from China, I don't know what it's like to live in China. I'm not, you know, I don't have Chinese background. It helps me to be like, it just felt like there was a part of it that was, even though it was different, felt like coming home. And they sort of talk about this during the movie when they're going through the old neighborhood that Nai used to live in. And it's just like, oh, I'd love to go see this place that, Awkwafina's just like, like, oh, there's a place I used to play here. I'd love to see it. It's just like, oh, it's all different. It's not even the same anymore. And there's sort of, like, in the way that they portray China, it feels like there's that feeling of, like, when you go home and it's still the place that you know, but it's different. And I just think that as far a feat of cinematography and a feat of putting you into the situation, I thought they did a really wonderful job of just nailing that. We're going to have to burn paper mache things for the leaderboard! This is the second time that I've seen a movie at Alamo Drafthouse, Los Angeles. Not to be missed. We'll go see again. Really waiting for their movie club, because that's when this whole thing takes a new twist. Onto the movie leaderboard. It's a really good flick. It's hard to say, though, how I think this will hold up in the grand scheme of things. I genuinely enjoyed myself throughout the entire experience of watching this movie, and I genuinely enjoyed like the way I felt when I left. Like I felt happy, and like it all I was there for a reason. Like it felt very divine, like in the sense that it all just sort of played out like this. But if I have to give it a rating, I give it an 8.3. Really cool flick, definitely worth checking out, and I think that makes it number 10 on the leaderboard right now. So quite an accomplishment from the farewell. I would definitely say that if you were up for a adult drama, then definitely go check it out. If not, I'm sure it's going to end up on some sort of streaming service at some point or another. But honestly, let me make a quick pitch to you. Go see it in the theater. Like, this is an independent movie. This is not, The Lion King or Avengers or anything like that. This is a movie that is going to stand on its own. It's going to be, it's not part of some big corporate plot to keep making farewell movies. It's just a really great flick that I think deserves support in the sense that you're going to actually go to the movie theater and see it. So if you like movies like this, I would definitely recommend that you go see it in theaters and don't wait until it's on streaming, just because it helps the people who make the movie. So that's just my quick pitch to you. See it wherever you want. Just see it at some point. Anyway, that does it for me. If you want more, you can go to my website, CoryBakerFilmmaker.com, Facebook.com/CoryBakerFilm, at LegendCB5 on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. If you like this review, please give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe, do all those things. If you have any movies that you want me to see, let me know, and I will go see them, and I will do reviews on them. Things might get a little bit busy here, because I have another big job on set coming up. So if the reviews slow down a little bit, know that I will be back soon, and that I love and miss you all. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, if you don't mind, I have to pretend like people I know who are dying are not dying.